I'm going to talk a little bit about the Lakeland Antique Mall, which is a place that some of you might be familiar with. Chances are you've heard a little bit about this place. It's an antique mall that happens to sell a lot of really interesting Disney, Universal, and just theme park stuff, which makes it a go-to spot for theme park fans, especially people who want to get something that's a little bit unique, a little bit different, not quite your garden variety souvenir. But here's the thing, as cool as it is, as appealing as it is it worth the trip? I know there are a lot of you who are probably wondering about this. I mean, why wouldn't you be? Lakeland isn't necessarily close to Walt Disney World, or Universal for that matter, and so it is a trek to make your way out there. And I mean, it seems like such a great option, but is it? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I'm going to give you some of my thoughts, some of my alternatives to the Lakeland Antique Mall. If you're looking for an interesting souvenir, something that is outside the norm. And, we're just going to get into it like we often do when we talk about things like this. So get comfortable and let's dig in. So first and foremost, the Lakeland Antique Mall isn't really in the immediate vicinity of the Walt Disney World or Universal Orlando Resort. It's kind of out of the way at about 40 minutes to an hour one way, about an hour to an hour and a half on the return trip, which can take a chunk out of your day. And it's worth noting that this is not going to be like just down the road. I know that some people suggest that it is, not really. Also, traffic can get really backed up that direction. I know that they have been doing a lot of work and it has lightened things up a bit, but it can still get pretty busy coming and going. Now, the Lakeland Antique Mall is also located in Lakeland, which is about halfway between the Orlando area and the Tampa area, which can make it a great place to stop in if you happen to be headed that direction. But if you're not, there's only so much to see and do out that way. You can find some interesting little restaurants here and there, or maybe some other fun and interesting things to stop and do along the way. There are interesting things all over the place, right? Like if you look hard enough. But for the most part, if you're going to be making the trek out this way, you're going this way to go to the Lakeland Antique Mall, maybe grab some fast food or ice cream or Chili's on your way home, which is actually what we did. And it was a whole lot of fun. So no judgment there, you do you. But I mention this because it's not necessarily going to be like a vacation-like experience heading out this way. But look, outside of the basics of coming and going, here are some of the things I think you really need to know if you're considering making a trip out to Lakeland Antique Mall. First and foremost, this is an antique mall that happens to have Disney and Universal stuff, but it's not a place that exclusively sells Disney and Universal stuff, which is really important to make note of because so often when people talk about it, they give you an impression that I just don't think is necessarily accurate. Now, that's not to say that they don't have some awesome stuff here that is related to Disney and Universal. They do, and they do have a big section of the store that is almost exclusively theme park stuff. But it's not the only thing that they have, which could be a good or bad thing, right? If you're looking for a place that's like however many 1,000 square feet of only theme park stuff, you might find yourself a little bit disappointed. But if you like to go antiquing anyway and poke around some of the old stuff that was pulled out of grandma's basement, in wherever it is that they happen to get this stuff, then this might be right up your alley. And they do have a lot of really cool and interesting stuff here, so it's worth wandering through and poking around. Now, outside of the fact that this isn't one of those places that exclusively sells theme park stuff, there are a few other things that I think you need to be aware of before making the trip out. First and foremost, a lot of the really special and really unique stuff that you're going to find here is pretty big and bulky. A few things that come to mind are, again, like the props from Halloween Horror Nights or furniture from the Walt Disney World Resort hotels or other restaurants and whatnot. A lot of the stuff that is worth taking into consideration, worth buying at the Lakeland Antique Mall, in my opinion, isn't something that you're going to easily get home unless you've got a truck or are driving yourself and you want to grab a trailer from U-Haul or something. Now, that's not to say that you won't find smaller things here that are easier to take home with you. You can, and you will, but for the most part, at least in my opinion, the most interesting things that you're going to find at the Lakeland Antique Mall are going to be very difficult to travel with, very difficult to bring home with you unless you happen to have your own vehicle and you're driving back home, wherever that may be. Speaking of smaller things that are easier to travel with, another thing that's really important to take into consideration is that places like Lakeland Antique Mall, they operate using vendors. So basically a vendor whoever that may be, will rent out a space and then they'll sell their stuff in that space. Even though it might seem like one big shop, like one big department store, it's not. Not really. And this is pretty great because you get a variety of stuff that's available in the Lakeland Antique Mall. But the downside is that, well, some of it is reseller stuff. Now, I've never been shy about my opinions regarding resellers before, and I'm not going to start now. I think it's pretty gross that there are people out there who buy up as much merchandise as they can manage just to sell it at a steep markup to take advantage of people like you. There's no world in which I think that that's okay. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. And it's really disappointing to see that that's happening at places like the Lakeland Antique Mall. And I'm sure it happens elsewhere as well. I could almost guarantee that it happens elsewhere, but still, I'm gonna tell you what I see. I'm gonna be honest with you. And I honestly see some of the vendors, taking advantage of people like you who make their way out to Lakeland Antique Mall with outrageous pricing on merchandise that in some cases is available either in the parks right now or in places like the Character Warehouse. Now, I saw 2 examples of this during our visit. They had a backpack that was $200. It was just available here at the outlet for $30. They also had some watering cans from the Flower and Garden Festival, like I think it was Spike's bee hunt thing. They were available here for 99 cents, there at the Lakeland Antique Mall for $6. Now, I don't mention this because I want to like wag my finger at the Lakeland Antique Mall. No, none of that, you know, like if you want to buy from Lakeland Antique Mall and the vendors there, you do that. But I mention this because I know there are a lot of you out there who are thinking, you know, we should go to Lakeland Antique Mall, think of all the cool things that we could get our hands on, but what if you could get that stuff much closer, like at a place like Character Warehouse here on Vineland or on International Drive for much less? I mean, my goal is to give you the information that you need to plan and have the best trip ever. It would be kind of silly if I ignored that important detail that resellers might be trying to take you for a ride at this place, right? Anyway, so I think it's worth mentioning. I think that's worth taking into consideration if you're thinking about heading this way. But here's the real question. Do I think it's worth the trip? That depends. Now look, just like with everything else, it depends on what your wants and needs are, how deep your pockets are, and what your capabilities are when it comes to getting this stuff home. Now personally, if you're looking to save a buck, I think that skipping places like the Lakeland Antique Mall, Recycling the Magic, or similar places is probably in your best interest. Opt to go to a place like Character Warehouse. If you have the opportunity, I actually recommend that you go to both locations here on Vineland, which is closest to Walt Disney World, and on International Drive, which is a little bit closer to Universal. They both have different merchandise. Sometimes they have similar stuff at both places, but for the most part, you can get away with some really fantastic deals and some unique stuff if you shop here. Sometimes you can even find stuff that was just in the parks, which, I mean, you can't go wrong. In fact, most of the stuff that I have, most of the Disney stuff, clothes, accessories, stuff like that, I've purchased here at Character Warehouse. The Vineland location specifically, but clothes, you can find some good stuff over on International Drive. Now, if you're looking for stuff that's a little bit more manageable size-wise, I highly recommend Recycling the Magic. It's not too out of the way, and yeah, you can find some larger-than-life stuff at Recycling the Magic and some really unique stuff as well, but for the most part, it's much more manageable. Stuff that you could easily ship back home or put in a suitcase. Now, the Lakeland Antique Mall, I think that this is best suited for people who are in the local area or are driving from their Florida vacation back home. I also think that it can be a great choice if you just want to browse. You want to kill some time and you happen to be in the area, you know, you want to walk through what is effectively a museum of secondhand Disney and Universal stuff. Maybe you stumble into something that you're willing to bring home in the car or rent a trailer to get it home. Maybe you get lucky and you find something that you're capable of shipping or willing to ship, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend the Lakeland Antique Mall for someone who's packing light, trying to skip out on luggage, or doesn't want to pay upwards of $100 to mail something home. Of course, this is just my opinion. I'd love to hear what you have to say, so let me know your thoughts in a comment down below. Let me know if you've been to any of these places. Do you recommend any of them? Why not? Also, let me know your favorite secondhand Disney find. Is there anything that you've ever purchased from a thrift store or one of these places that was just perfect, like called out to you from the back of a shelf and you grabbed it and you just couldn't not bring it home? I'd love to hear about it. But for now, I'm off. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I look forward to seeing you guys in our next one. Until then, bye.